The next point, the next insight, COVID-19 and God's signs. This for me is a powerful point. Let's just be very honest, brothers and sisters and friends. Many of us have never seen a virus. You've seen it in a book, yes, but that's testimonial evidence. Someone has taken an image and they've claimed it's a virus, okay? But we, generally speaking, the masses, have never seen a virus ourselves directly. We've never touched a virus in terms of that we could actually feel it. But we truly believe this virus exists. Why? Because of the symptoms, because of the signs, because of the medical authorities, because we've listened to other people's testimonial that they've said that they became ill and they had the same symptoms, because of the news reports, because of multiple sources that are telling us that this virus and all these people are dying, and we see the images of people passing away, and we see all of these things, right? And we may even attend a funeral that someone may have passed away because of COVID-19. The point is we have all of these signs and symptoms and statements of experts, right? And people's experiences to conclude that this virus exists and it has some effect. But I want you to anchor off that conceptually. There are far greater signs for the existence of Allah. There are far greater signs for the existence and power and glory of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Direct and indirect. It's not the space here to go into proofs of God's existence. Balagh Academy have good courses on that topic, and other institutions. But the point is, I want you to think about the concept here. If we can truly believe in this virus and its effects to the point that we would take preventative measures, right? If we could truly believe with certainty that this virus exists, and all we're referring to is symptoms and signs and statements of experts and other people's experiences, then what does it mean about affirming the existence and the reality and majesty and power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Because there's far more greater evidence. Just look at the macro universe, the universe that we live in, or even the micro universe, the universe within, because within us is a small universe, which reminds me of a poem from the poet of the East, Muhammad Iqbal, when he said, for the disbeliever, he is lost in the cosmos, but for the believer, the cosmos is lost in him, right? So there are so many signs. The fact that we have consciousness, that we have the ability to have rational insights, rational thinking, the universe itself with this mathematical structure and the laws in the universe, our sense of right and wrong in terms of there are objective moral truths and values. Even also our innate awareness of that there is a creator, that there is cause and effect, that things that begin must have a cause, this innate understanding of causality, or the innate kind of psychology of smiling and praising things by virtue of their attributes, right? And that's why we praise Allah as well, because we praise Allah because of who He is, by virtue of His attributes. We have the kind of common denominator, the basic understanding of these things within our innate nature, also known as the fitrah in the Islamic tradition. So there are so many signs within the universe and within ourselves that we can conclude that Allah exists and that Allah has power and majesty. And these are far greater signs than the signs that we refer to when it comes to being convinced about this virus and taking preventative measures. You know, the symptoms, the signs, the statement of experts, and other people's experiences. So it's very important for us to think about that, and it could propel us to start investigating. Yeah, let's look at some of these signs in the universe and within ourselves. Like consciousness, for example. Like consciousness has baffled neuroscientists and scientists. In actual fact, they can't answer the question. This is called the hard problem of consciousness. The fact that we have inner subjective conscious states and conscious experiences. Like, for example, I'm going to break my fast in a few hours, inshallah, God willing. And when I have a date, you know, I'm going to have a subjective conscious experience of what it's like to have a date. I know what it's like to have a date for me. I'm having an internal experience, a subjective experience. However, you will not know what it's like for me to have a date. You wouldn't know what that subjective experience is for me, even if I describe it, because words such as sweet and tasty are just vehicles to meaning, and meaning is a vehicle of that subjectivity which you can't really understand because it's me, right? Even if you were to find out all the neurochemical pathways in my brain and correlate it with my experience of having a day at iftar time, at the time of breaking my fast, you will still not be able to know what it's like for me to have a day at that time. You may know what it's like for you, but it doesn't follow that you know what it's like for me. This is called the hard problem of consciousness, one aspect of the hard problem of consciousness. Another aspect of the hard problem of consciousness is, well, why is it that human beings like myself have inner subjective conscious experiences and they seemingly arise from non-rational, non-conscious physical processes? It's just electrochemical firings in the brain. It doesn't look very conscious and alive to me, but somehow inner subjective conscious experiences arise from non-rational, blind, non-conscious electrochemical activity. This should just, I'm not going to go into the big argument of an argument about consciousness for the existence of God. No, but I'm trying to just tease your thinking here. That's for another webinar. That's for another study session. What about rational thinking? We have the ability to have rational insights. We can take two statements or premises and we could somehow in our minds logically follow that there is a conclusion. So we have a rational insight into a conclusion based on previous statements or premises, right? How can we do that? How can we do that when it's just based on physical processes that are blind? They're non-intentional from the point of view. There's no kind of grand intentional scheme about physical stuff in the universe, according to the naturalists, by the way, according to the physicalists. So how can we have these rational insights when, generally speaking, physical processes are blind in that way? They're non-conscious. How can they take two premises and connect them in some way to look and have an insight into a conclusion? How? How does that happen? It's equivalent of basically a taxi driver picking up two passengers and driving them to their destination with a blindfold on. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. This universe is not a blind universe, right? It's not a non-intentional universe. How could it be? Take the universe itself. This universe has mathematical laws, the physical laws of the universe, that if they were different, that we wouldn't have conscious, complex life, sentient life on Earth. Look at even the kind of arrangement of our solar system. It looks very life-permitting to me. Take, for example, Jupiter. Jupiter acts as a friendly giant. Its gravitational pull brings and pulls all the asteroids and celestial objects that are heading towards Earth. And it's a shield for Earth. If Jupiter wasn't there, Earth would be like Swiss cheese. It would be Swiss cheese. It would be very unlikely to have any conscious life on this planet, at least complex conscious life. What about the moon? We have a love-hate relationship with the moon. The moon, for example, in its early formation was quite close to the Earth, but then it moved away because of angular momentum. If it stayed close, there will be no life. Why? Because it would create frictional heating and the crust would have melted away. So there seems to be some kind of a life-sensitive arrangement of the solar system. What about going on Earth itself? Earth is a phenomenal place. Species and animals and insects and all of these amazing things that are happening on this planet. Take the ant, for example. Ants, according to biologists, are the closest thing to us sociologically. Do you know that? It's not the ape, it's not the primate, because they don't live in cities. Ants are the closest thing to us sociologically. For example, ants live in cities, they communicate, they have armies, they even have a punishment system, right? They even have herd. Yes, ants have herd, just like we have, like sheep and cows, right? But they have aphids, and they would move the aphids from the lesser green area of the leaf to the more greeny part of the leaf. And they would milk the aphids just like we milk cows. How do ants do this? They stroke the back of the aphids, and the aphids produce honeydew, and ants drink the honeydew. This is phenomenal, right? This is the kind of planet that we're living on. We're living on a planet that there are seeds that only germinate from the heat of forest fires. There are seeds that only germinate from the heat of forest fires, and so many other amazing things. What about a sense of morality, right? A sense of, objective morality, like killing an innocent human being is objectively morally wrong. What do we mean by objective? We mean that it's mind independent. This refers to meta ethics, moral ontology, right? That there are morals that are mind independent, meaning that they're objective. Because if the whole universe were to come together, the whole planet were to come together and say it's morally good to kill an innocent human being, it would still be morally wrong. That's what it means to be mind independent. But if that's the case, how do we explain the existence of objective moral values? How do we explain them? How do we explain them? What are their source, and what can explain them to be objective in that sense? What explains their mind-independent nature? Well, it can't be biology. It can't be physical processes, that's for sure, right? And that's why even Charles Darwin had a huge doubt about this matter, because he was saying that if we're reared under precisely the same conditions as the hive bees, we would think it's okay to kill our fertile daughters, right? And that means that morals, according to a kind of biological perspective, are based on these biological variables. So it removes the sense of objectivity, and it removes the sense of meaning, any moral meaning. Likewise, if we take this example and extend it, if we're reared under precisely the same conditions as the nurse shark, we would think it's okay to rape our mates, right? Why? Because the nurse shark, according to the National Geographic, bites the fin of its mate and wrestles its mate before it mates, right? So we can't really argue that this sense of objective morality came from biology, because, it's just based on specific biological conditions. And that means we could have believed that something else was morally good or morally bad if we had a different set of biological conditions. So that removes the objectivity of morals, and it takes away the mind-independent nature of morals. Obviously, this is just a summary. There's more to it than that. But as I said, this is just to encourage your thinking. So Allah says in the Quran in Surah Al-Baqarah, 2nd chapter, verse 164, indeed, in the creation of the heavens and the earth, the alternation of the night and day, the day and night, the ships that sail the sea for the benefit of humanity, the rain sent down by God from the skies, reviving the earth after its death, the scattering of all kinds of creatures throughout, the shifting of the winds, and the clouds drifting between the heavens and the earth. In all of this are surely signs for people of understanding. Just as a caveat, remember, this is a very kind of cursory, rhetorical approach to some of these examples of arguments for God's existence. I've done it deliberately to encourage your thinking, not to give you a full argument. You need to read, you need to study, you need to go to another course or a webinar, buy some books. I'm just doing it deliberately to make you think. If we can believe in this virus and its effects, and we take preventative measures, and we have certainty in it based on just these things, signs, symptoms, and statements of people, what about the existence of Allah when we have far more direct and indirect evidence? That's the main point.